Trusted Moms. I'm Mom, a.k.a. Sandra, and these are my daughters, Candace and Alyssa, and these are my daughter-in-laws, Brooks and Felisha. And we wanted to welcome you to our online community of women where we meet every week and we are silly. So
we are silly right now.
So welcome. This week, our moderator is going to be Brooks. And what are we talking about?
We're talking about walking in faith.
Okay, not a silly subject. All right.
I mean, it could be.
Stop all the jokes right now.
No fun.
Okay.
Stole the thunder.
That's how Felisha makes us be quiet before we start.
I love it.
All right, go, Brooks.
So walking in faith, is trusting in God.
Yes.
Right. So even when we can't see everything, it's, stepping out in confidence, even though, we are going, oh my goodness, what's about to happen?
Right.
So oftentimes as women in the church, though, we often hear walking in faith in the same terminology of a woman of faith. So I wanted to ask
That's completely different.
Yeah.
Right. What is a woman of faith to you?
Okay. So a woman of faith is someone who believes in God and believes that, Jesus died for her. That's a woman of faith. That's anybody who believes. Woman of faith, man of faith. Walking in faith is completely different because I used to teach at Bible college and I would teach the students that people think they're walking in faith when everything's going great. And you're like, I'm walking in faith. You're not walking in faith. You're walking in the blessing. Walking in faith is when you don't know what is coming next. And what did you say a minute ago about stepping out in confidence? And I went, well, okay, the confidence is knowing that God is taking care of it. It's not, I'm so confident, your confidence is, I know that God's going to take care of it. So your walking in faith is knowing that I don't know what this next step looks like, but I am trusting that God is leading me and my steps are ordered of him. And so that is walking in faith, trusting when your world is falling apart and you're trusting in the Lord. That's what walking in faith truly is. The end. We're done.
I like walking in the blessing best. I feel like whenever you're walking, I have this picture of what a walking and the blessing is. You got a little step. And whenever you're walking in faith, you're like,
it's like a tiptoe.
That's why as Mom was saying that, I was picturing that because it's true. There is a difference in it.
It's very different.
And I think that is, like you said, it's two totally different things. But often in the church world, those things get mixed up, right? Completely. And so, because we hear all these Bible stories of women of faith, which, and they are put on, kind of a pedestal because obviously they're in the Bible, right? But I feel like as your definition clearly stated, that is any woman who believes. Right? There's characteristics that we kind of associate. And that was going to be my next question. Who do you, when you think of the Bible, who are you thinking of as a strong woman of faith? And what are those characteristics that I'm
going to tell you someone that probably nobody ever picks.
Go for it.
Job's wife.
I love it.
Because anytime I've heard anyone preach about Job's wife, they always take the line where she's like, just curse God and die. But I don't see it that way because I've watched my husband go through hard things. So this woman is watching her husband go through some very hard things mentally, physically covered in sores. So emotionally, probably even spiritually, he's probably thinking, what have I done? Where is God? I don't think she said it flamboyantly of just curse God and die.
No,
I think of a woman, a wife. Think of your husband going through this horrible, horrible thing that you're also going through. I think it was more out of a crying desperation, trying to comfort him, soothe him, and in sobbing tears says, do we just curse God and die? I see that completely different of not very flippantly, whatever, because people forget this was a woman who also lost her children, who also lost her servants that were as his family, because these people lived with them, who've also lost all of their finances. It's one-sided.
Because you hear those stories, that story specifically, and you know of his dedication and his servant.
What about hers?
And you know that he's strong in the faith. So you know that she has to have some of that instilled in her. So to know the blessing on the other end of that, you know, well, I mean, if she's cursing God.
But like, let's say too, she gets that one line
that she's the most famous for.
There are chapters of Job where he's like, what? Like, he is wrestling with the Lord, and then the Lord's like, "I'm sorry, did you put the So I agree with Mom in the sense that, like, we hear that one line from her, and we're like, oh, she left the Lord. Chapters Job is wrestling with the Lord. I'm like, how could you do this to me? So I agree with that. That's not one I would think of, but the faithfulness of her to stay in that marriage, to be
and
that
you've
person.
lost your children too. This didn't just happen to Job. Her children are gone. Her servants who were like family are gone. Her money is gone too. Her husband cannot even do anything because of the physical pain and the sores that he is covered in. That is, any wife you're going through that, you are just as broken, but you don't hear people think about that. But I have gone through things with Dad, and we've gone, and I am just as broken as he is through this. And even more so, well, what am I going to do if my husband goes now? You know, that's a really tough I know situation.
You and Dad have gone through it.
Yes.
You know, and I know you've been there. But just think about like the little things, like with us, like when he gets a cold, or something happens where Dale's throwing out his back. Like, you as a wife, though, like, you want to help them. Like, you 100%. They are your protector, and you are their helpmate. And it's like, that is everything that you want to make them feel better, get them better. And it's so, as her perspective, she's doing.
Maybe she didn't say it flippantly. It was a genuine sobbing.
This will be the best thing for you.
Is this what we do now? I don't know.
And I think, to bring it back to what we're talking about, gosh, isn't that the example of what Job is for us in the Bible, and then what we should be doing as far as walking in faith? Walking in faith doesn't mean that you don't question. Or that you don't have a moment where you're like, Lord, I why? Like, why is this happening to me? But seeing that the two of them as a couple walk it out and be like, but even still, I'm going to be faithful and love the Lord. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to ask him why, and I'm not sad and my heart is broken because it's happening. But even still, I'm going to have the faith and walk.
She wasn't like the friend. She wasn't saying,
like, this is your fault.
What'd you do? What'd you do?
Exactly.
So
how'd you mess this up?
You must have done something, Job. She wasn't saying that. The friends were.
I know. Did anybody else have one? No.
Flea.
For me, I relate to, I think, Ruth the most. Like, she comes from, I relate to Ruth in the aspect of, she's from a non-Christian, like, she doesn't serve the God of Israel. She goes, like, she gives up, turns from everything and walks with her mother-in-law after they lost their husbands. And she's like, okay, God, like, whatever it looks like, I'm following you. And there was a point where I'm like, okay, God, like, I've messed it up so bad. Like, there's like, you're my only way. Like, what do I do now? And, like, I give it to you. So for me, like, I love Ruth's story of just persevering and just turning and saying, okay, God, like, you're the true God. I serve you.
That's good. I like it.
So a lot of times, like we talked before, when walking in faith, we talk about it being those difficult times, right? Like, we're stumbling through this, we're turning to him, we're literally having to, like, hold on to that, like you said, the confidence in him to get this done. But then there's other times where we still walk in faith and, like, in aspects of, like, a new beginning and something that's exciting, but, like, there's a little fear there, but it's more of a positive. And I think about, like, being called out of your comfort zone, like stepping into another level, right? So, with stuff in my life, there's, medical stuff. Like there's a season where I was like, okay, this is a little scary. Yeah. But then we got to a plateau where we're like, okay, this is good. Okay, where are we going to take this next step? And is this the correct decision? Right. And being kind of called out of your comfort zone to be like, okay, I can still do this. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Has there been a time where you guys have experienced that? Is that something that anybody can kind of elaborate on?
So for me, moving home was like that. Yeah. It was scary in the sense that I always kind of said I was not coming back home. After
you didn't always said kinda.
So I had said I was not coming back home.
Yeah, let's set the record straight.
But again, that was on Alyssa being the one trying to control the narrative of my life. And that's not a bad thing to, at one point in your life, be like, hey, these are my goals that I personally these are wants and desires that I have. That was a want and desire. I wanted to travel the world, see stuff. I did not want to be back home. But the Lord had called us in a different way. And I remember I told Dale the night that I had gotten off the phone with you. It's the same day Maddie Grace was born. And at the time, the church we were at, the worship leader had told you guys that morning before you gave birth that she was leaving.
Just on my way to the hospital. By the way.
So gonna be here.
Yeah. So Mom and I were just on the phone talking about Flea being in the hospital, and we were excited. And Mom says, hey, Trevor got out of a meeting this morning and this was said. And I just instantly knew, like in my spirit, it was
you actually started crying.
Yeah. But what was crazy is I tell Mom on the phone, I had a dream that I was supposed to be back home leading worship with Trevor. But in my mind, there was no position that was ever going to open. This was a young girl. She was going to be there for years. We were going to be at that church for years. But again, the Lord had a different plan. And so as soon as you said that, I remember being so nervous to tell Dale when he came home. But I have never felt that just confident before that I knew this was it. And I told him that day, I said, listen, I don't even think I waited until he came home for dinner. It was like his lunch hour. And I was like, I got to tell you something. I'm like in tears. He's like, what is going on? And I told him, I said, I am as confident as I was knowing you were supposed to be my husband as I am in this decision. And that was kind of it for us. But it was not easy. I mean, we that day put our house on the market instantly. And I think we were gone a few days later, but the Lord knew what was supposed to happen. And then that same week we found out you had cancer for the third time. And the day, the week that we moved in, I took a pregnancy test and found out I was pregnant. Yeah, so it was like the Lord was opening that, but it was that just exhilarating confidence that I was like, okay, this is the Lord moving.
So people often in church terms, and I kind of rely back on you on this, don't people call that discerning the call? Isn't that kind of the phrase that people use for that situation? Discerning the thing.
The Lord was speaking that she knew this was, this was what she was supposed to do.
And I feel like that for most people, what they're experiencing is just what you experienced. That immediate knowing of something is there. And it's not always just as immediate as the decision you made. Right. Sometimes it's going to take.
And sometimes you don't know that you know that you know. Yeah. You just have to be like, I really think this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. And I'll say too, it doesn't always mean that even after making the step in faith that you don't question it. We moved home. I got so sick that I had to move in with my parents. I am now very pregnant, living without my husband because he had to stay in the place we were in because we had animals. So, I sobbed every night, literally in the shower, thinking to myself, God, why is there not a home that you have provided for us? Did I make the wrong call? I told my husband I was confident in this, and he followed with me.
I'm living with my mom while he's in the apartment with the animals.
And it didn't look like the promise it was supposed to if we came. That same season, mind you, we leave the church. The whole reason that I moved home was to do ministry with my brother. And by a few months later, there was no ministry to do. So I can remember in that season being like, oh, well, where's the promise that you were move home? But now I can obviously clearly look where we are, having the platform you guys are watching on, having Champion Church. We live in a home that I have had the pleasure. Okay, we're done. The pleasure of bringing 2 babies home in. That is ours. That is the promise. But it did not come as soon as we said, yes, let's put our house in the market.
Like what we think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there was a lot of like, God, was that really you that I heard?
1,000,000%. Like, and I think too, I think sometimes when it's your husband calling that, because that is his role in the family, it's so much easier to be like, okay, well, we made the wrong call. Like, it's all right. Like, no big deal. Yeah. But being the wife, being the one that was like, no, I know this is what we're supposed to do. And he agreed to that. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Was there nights where I was like, oh my gosh, have I just absolutely put us in the worst position? But clearly,
so when Kingston was born, Brandon worked for the family. Mm-hmm. And in the hospital room, he sat up. My husband likes to make like just things that like declarations that things are happening and just in moments. But he was like, listen, I've decided I'm going to go back and be a firefighter. And I was like, wait a second. Like, I'm literally had just given birth.
Yeah,
we need to figure this out. And then he said he was going back to a department that literally for a year and a half, he had to take no pay at and be an intern. And I remember laying there going, oh my goodness, like, what are we going to do? Mm-hmm. But knowing the passion behind what he was doing and having to trust in him, but also walking in that faith of like, all right, we're going to be okay. Mm-hmm. Like, we're going to figure this out. God has us in this, because there is an end thing that is going to glorify him. Yeah. But it's those risks that are like, scary. Super scary, because like you were talking about, like, it's a moment where you're like, you're on unstable ground. You're having to fully rely and take the risk essentially and just go.
I mean, and most of the time the risk, people around you don't understand it. They're like, what you're doing is insane. Like, you should not do that. But there's just like you said, there's a confidence. Like, okay, I know this is from the Lord. Like, I'm going to step out regardless of the circumstances, regardless of how it looks, because I know that he's the provider. And I believe with all my heart, whether it's God or it's not, if you step out in faith with full trust, thinking, okay, God, like, this is you, God's going to catch you if you fall. Like, he's going to be there.
Right. I definitely went through those positions just in my single life, and have an apartment and working like 3 jobs and doing this. And it's just like, not even the big decisions like you guys had to make at the time with your spouse. I had to do like little decisions like, all right, can I stay in this apartment another month?
Well, that's not a little decision. That's a big decision in your life.
Like, but I didn't have another person to agree with me or anything. So it's really on yourself. So like, all those people are like, can I pay this bill? I know moms look for houses. And like, when we were at that time and when we were younger, mine was more like, can I pay this bill? Can I have food to eat? God provides. I know he does. Trying to have that faith, at the time, all right, I'm having faith. I'm going to do my work. I'm going to pray, I'm gonna go to work, and like, he does. He always had food on my table. Like, I always had some food. The bills were always paid at my apartment, even though I had the struggle, but everybody does now. But it's just always having that faith that he will provide. And you have, and I, telling Colby that too now. I do have someone. I'm like, he's going to provide. I know bills went up. We're going to be okay. Everything's perfect. It works out.
The more times you say yes to God, the easier that yes comes the next time.
Because your faith is built.
Your faith gets built every time you go through something difficult that you had to trust. That your faith just gets stronger and stronger and stronger.
James 1, right? Be faithful, knowing that when the testing comes, that there's perseverance in the end. So like, I fully believe that, and we are all living testimonies of that. That trials, struggles, things will happen, but the more you believe, the more your faith will grow. And all of that. So
that's good.
I think that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today, and just just elaborate on that. That walking by faith is something that you do have to choose. You do have to put the effort in to do it, and it is sometimes it's scary, sometimes it's a great fun moment. But that that it is part of our relationship with the Lord. Right. We as children of God, of women of faith, it is part of our relationship to rely on him for those things. And it's just, it's tough for our beings to want to do, but it's something that will grow you and strengthen you and strengthen the people around you.
I think we should all do the confidence.
Yeah, the confidence walk. I like it.
I cannot.
That's going to be a thing.
Like I was walking out of that hotel. We won't tell that story today. But anyhow, so that's a story for another day.
Oh, my Lord.
That's a story for another day. So that's all for this week. We're so glad that you joined us. Leave the comments below that you want things for us to talk about or you want to add to the conversation. Go to our website, sign up for our newsletter, and come have fun with us over on Instagram. The links are all below. So until next week, we'll see you. Have a great week.